I really do appreciate this opportunity. This is something that I was excited to partake in because it's an area of knowledge that I want to grow in and I want to learn more about. So as I was doing my research and my due diligence on who the panelists are, the word that was used to describe me was star moderator, but I'm a very humble person compared to these guys. And I love the fact that the diversity between each of the presenters is really great, between education, between life experiences, between living in foreign countries and having to adapt to different cultures. Just fantastic. And I think that all of those different types of experiences will reflect within the actual presentation. And there's a lot of information to cover. This is a very hot topic, as many of you know. It's a topic that's here and now, but it's also in the future. So we have a lot to go through. And so I would like to introduce our first presenter, Rob Miller. He's the Chief Marketing Officer for HyperloopTT. He's a neuroscientist with more than 20 years of international experience in global marketing and operations. He has really devoted himself to innovation, especially where technology and art meet. So I think that that's really a very special kind of blend of science with that. And he's been with the Hyperloop Transportation Technologies since 2016 as Chief Marketing Officer. His team is really working to break through the mobility industry and bring forth a lot of new ways of thinking and new design concepts, which is pretty amazing. He also has a lot of experience outside of the United States with being the CMO for an Asian company for Cotton USA. He led a team of 17 offices in over 40 countries, and he's repositioning and launching the brand to modern, digitally minded, always connected consumers. So Rob speaks fluent Japanese. He currently resides in Los Angeles, and I really appreciated the fact that he is very dedicated to philanthropic efforts, and he connects himself to things that are greater than himself. So without further ado, Rob, if you would please present to us your presentation today.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Good morning from Los Angeles, everyone. It's an honor to be here. And Jason, let me know, because we can talk about Hyperloop for hours. So if I start rambling and I pass my time up, let me know and I'll try to finish up. So it's an honor to be here. Hyperloop, I'm sure, as everyone knows, is a new form of transportation. We have a train. Essentially, you put the train into a tube, you evacuate the air, and you're able to travel airplane speeds on the ground efficiently, safely, and sustainably. And I wanted to start with this slide because the first thing I wanted to let you know is that since the company started in 2013 after Elon Musk released his alpha paper, I joined in 2016, and that time we've taken something that was on paper and studied and made it a reality. So this first image is our test facility in Toulouse, France. It's 320 meters of a full-scale Hyperloop. It's the only full-scale Hyperloop system in the world. 4-meter diameter tubes. This is where we're doing our testing and certification, and we're developing the guidelines to build commercial systems. So we can go on to the next slide. This is the construction of the fuselage of the first Hyperloop capsule. So something we built back in 2019 for the first time, just to kind of give you a time-lapse view of what the passenger system looks like. We're going to talk about freight a lot today, but we started and we're thinking about passenger. And that's the polished finished version of the capsule. Next slide. This is a kind of our technology slideshow. Top left is the center in Toulouse, which I mentioned. Hyperloop works via vacuum system. So this is the vacuum pump system that would be spaced every 10 kilometers. The bottom left is our safety isolation valve. So if for any reason, for maintenance or for any reason you need to shut down the system, these are also spaced every 10 kilometers. First of its kind in the world, and one of the largest valves in the world, and then our passenger capsule on the right. And for us, we're a technology company, we're a transportation company, but we consider ourselves a design company as much as transportation of technology. Why? Because it's a responsibility, one, to transport goods and passengers, and to build new infrastructure around the world. We need to do it in a way that really respects the passenger. And I think sometimes when we travel today, we've lost that sense of respect for the passenger. I know flying from one place to another, just continually getting worse and worse. And now that everyone's back traveling again, some of the worst experiences I've had have been recent travel. So we're still losing respect for the passenger, and we need to respect our environments as well. So we're looking at how we design these things with in urban, in rural, in environments. It needs to be adaptable, so it needs to be above ground. It needs to be cut and fill, or it needs to be underground. And Hyperloop are able to do all of those things. And the way we've thought about it is we're building an infrastructure system, and you need to be respectful of life above and life below, because if you look at the history of some cities and elevated freeways, how they've divided neighborhoods instead of bringing them together. So we've thought a lot about what we can do on top of a Hyperloop system. For the majority of Hyperloop, there will be solar panels along the way, which actually allows the Hyperloop to be a power station of sorts. So you could park your car underneath a pylon and charge your autonomous vehicle from the power that's created through a Hyperloop. It's no sound. You can cross, animals can cross, so there are no issues there. So we're designing with the thought of how we bring this to life. That's very quickly on the passenger. So what we've thought about, and a partnership that we created with, we think who the most innovative player in the freight and cargo world is the HHLA at the Port of Hamburg. A completely autonomous experience there, moving an amazing amount of freight containers daily. And the reality is that today, 90% of our global trade is conducted at sea. However, when you get into these port areas, one, there's not enough space to maintain the growth in the freight industry, and two, they're usually in an urban environment, often on land that's highly valuable, and often in an urban environment. Essentially, when you're unloading all of these freight containers, you have a parade of trucks that are picking them up. So outside of the Port of Hamburg, for example, there are times when there are 45 minutes, an hour backed up of trucks waiting to enter, and those trucks are traveling through urban environments and creating a lot of pollution and creating a lot of congestion. So we have the opportunity with a Hyperloop to essentially move this distribution offshore in a very fast way, in places where there's much less congestion. So that's the idea behind Hyperport. Any freight solution for the future, if you're building a future transportation, it needs to be all of these things, efficient, obviously safe, sustainable. For us, we consider frictionless a big element. It has to be profitable, and it has to be high speed. And as this example, this is where we're in Los Angeles and Madrid, and I think we have participants from everywhere across the globe. But we're starting with the port of Hamburg here, so you can see that we're traveling through almost the entirety of Germany to Munich, example, in less than 40 minutes in freight. It's a little bit lower speed than our passenger capsules, but it's still, we're starting off at 600 kilometers per hour. Back in 2019 at CES in Las Vegas, and all good conversations start in Las Vegas. Jaime Moreno and I sat down with our founder, Dirk Alborn, and we talked about the design challenges with creating a freight Hyperloop. And so that started the Hyperloop conversation, and that started what we consider to be a critical partnership to the work that's been done over the past 2 years to bring this freight concept to life. And go back for a second, sorry. And so before we show the next slide, this is something that we haven't shown, we'll be announcing soon. I can just show you a few seconds, but this is the first ever release of anything Hyperport. So you'll just get a very quick glimpse, because we don't want to release too much, but this is the Hyperport in action. Okay, next slide, please. And again, we could talk about so many different things, and Jason, maybe in the questions we can address anything I didn't cover, but it's been an honor to just spend a few minutes with you today, and that is the Hyperport and Hyperloop. Thank you.
Excellent, Rob. Thank you. Yes, we will hit Q&A at the end of all this. We want to make sure we get all of our presentations finished, and then we've already got a question here. So, and there's a number of other ones coming in. So, I would like to now introduce Adrian Talbot, who is the head of Center of Excellence for Mobility for Ferrovial. And Ferrovial, yep. And then what's interesting is that he has 20 years of experience in technology and digital transformation, developing projects and strategies for some of the leading organizations across numerous industry sectors. Ferrovial is a company that is huge and does so many different things. And the fact that we have Adrian here to talk about some of his expertise in this world is pretty outstanding. For the last 10 years, he's been focusing on innovation using data and technology to improve the social and the economic and educational outcomes of communities and society, which is obviously incredibly important, especially today. He has a passion for smart cities and topics such as AI, IoT, and predictive analytics. All really great passions to have given the current landscape and what he's doing. And since June of 2015, he has developed multi-million-pound project portfolios that use data and advanced technology to improve the effectiveness of transportation, environmental services, infrastructure maintenance, and social care, and that are supporting communities by giving local residents and business more influence on the services that they depend on. So, Adrian, without further ado, would you please join us in presenting your knowledge?
Thanks very much, Jason, and lovely to hear from Rob. I think I might be re-showing at least one of your images later on in my presentation. Hopefully you can all see my presentation. It's always interesting when trying to jump from one to another. But what I'd like to talk today about is Ferrovial's view on sustainable infrastructure, and particular user-centric infrastructure, and what we're doing and why we're doing some of those things. Just a quick introduction. As Jason says, Ferrovial is a large organization headquartered in Madrid, but with a footprint all over the world. And what we do is very simply, we build and operate sustainable infrastructures for a world on the move. And we do that across a number of different sectors: highways, airports, mobility services, and we're just now entering into the world of energy generation and energy transmission. So very much, ticking a lot of the boxes that are needed to deliver on our vision. So why do we do these things? Well, it's very simply to improve the connection between people, places, and things. In Jason's introduction of myself, we mentioned these things, and it's obviously very, very important. This image only includes people, and I should really update it to include things as well. And like Rob, we talk about people movement and also logistics of goods, and those are really important. And when we do that, we need to be looking and factoring in things such as congestion, emissions. Again, all things Hyperloop are really focused on. Also equality, and I think, again, user centricity is really important, and something that I think with the new administrations in US, I think the word equality is going to be something that we're going to be hearing a lot more of in the coming years, especially when it comes to infrastructure. It's been a major part of European life for a long time, especially public transit, not so much historically in the US, but it's growing, and we're going to see an equality or an improved focus in that space in the US over the coming years. And obviously all of these things all add up. If we can achieve all of those things, we can improve the quality of life for everyone, and that's ultimately what we want to achieve. Obviously, deriving value from that is what Ferrovial and other companies like HTT are all about. So how are we looking to do this? Everybody's, I imagine a lot of people have seen this image, but I still think it's really good. So if you look at cars, and the space required to move a certain number of people, it doesn't really matter whether your car is a normal internal combustion engine, whether it's an electric car or autonomous car. The number, if you're only one person per vehicle, as is the norm, I think the general average is about 1.05 people per vehicles globally, which is obviously not very good. But if you do that, it doesn't really matter which kind of vehicle you have. You're going to take up the same amount of space, and you're going to require the same amount of concrete and tarmac to actually move those vehicles around. But if we start looking at, different kinds of capacity management, not just, managing how we can optimize the number of vehicles on the road, but actually the types of vehicles, we can actually start, fitting in a lot more people, whether it's using buses or whether it's bicycles or whether they're walking, whether they're in, different kinds of pods. So capacity management generally is something that we're very, very focused on in Ferrovial, and we have different methods and modes of dealing with that. We operate a bunch of autonomous vehicles of different types. We've operated the Docklands Light Rail, which has been the first fully autonomous light rail in the world. We operate the Heathrow pods, which was the first fully autonomous PRT system in the world. And obviously looking to deploy more of these solutions globally as well. We also have, we own and operate a number of managed lanes and managed cordons. These are the ones on the image now, or some of the managed lanes that we have in Texas. And we're also, increasingly going to be seeing congestion and low emission zones and different types of exclusion zones and cordons going to be introduced increasingly around the world. And they will be managed in different ways. They will have different drivers, but ultimately they will have the same overall effect to reduce the number of reduce congestion and reduce emissions, and in some cases, obviously raise taxes or raise revenue for the cities for different purposes. We're also looking very heavily at connected autonomous fleet orchestration, And what do we mean by that? Well, at the moment we're running a major program in the US called Aviation, which is about orchestrated connected corridors, which is about increasing the level of digitization in highway corridors, and effectively, rather than adding capacity through new lanes or new roads, we're actually doing it by increasing the digital capacity of the roads themselves, by adding new sensors, being able to manage the vehicles better, and not only connected autonomous vehicles, but also all vehicles. So for the foreseeable future, we believe that it doesn't really matter what the adoption rate of connected and autonomous vehicles are. For the next 30 or 40 years, at the very least, we will have what we call a mixed traffic environment, where you have autonomous vehicles mixing with connected vehicles, mixing with or conventional vehicles. And if you're in an autonomous vehicle stuck behind a slow driver, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that your vehicle is super state-of-the-art and autonomous. It's still going to be stuck behind a slow vehicle. So you need to have scenarios and ways of managing that, and we're really focused on doing that rather than just always adding new lane capacity, which is, let's be honest, which is where we've come from. We're a construction firm at our heart. And so this is also a transformation towards the more digital opportunities and user-centric opportunities that we need to go through. We're also looking at shared mobility and mobility as a service opportunities. Just very recently, we merged our own mobility as a service offering Wando with the world leader Mass Global, probably better known as WIM, which is the world's leading mobility as a service provider. We also operate in joint venture with Renault, both in Madrid and Paris, the city shared vehicle fleet, which is fully electric and using high capacity Zoes. Obviously, perhaps the longest range electric vehicle of its type at the moment. And we have the largest fleets of both of those in both Madrid and Paris. And despite COVID, doing quite nicely in a very difficult market. We also looking to the future as what else can we look at? So we are obviously, as I've mentioned with some of the programs, looking to improve, the digital and data infrastructure in all of these environments, whether it be highways, whether it be airports, whether it be, as Rob was mentioning, ports. All of these environments will benefit from an increased digital and data infrastructure footprint. If we look at, into more urban environments, I'm sure you've all seen the rise of shared bicycles and shared scooters and e-scooters and, some of the mess that these can leave. So in terms of, what we're looking at in terms of urban infrastructure enhancements, we can also see a future where there are a lot more organized ways of managing these things using docks, which not only obviously manage the logistics, but also help to do the recharging and other equivalent factors, also providing safety enhancements for maybe not the users of the vehicles themselves, but for passers-by in particular. Not blocking up the pavements and sidewalks. And then finally, of course, as I mentioned, we're looking to develop our position within the sustainable energy infrastructure space. Not only looking at electrification, which is an obvious area to focus, but also looking at alternative fuels such as hydrogen and solar, for example. And recently, we did a test of one of the first floating wind turbines, which is something I know is of big interest and a real growth opportunity in certain markets. Finally, looking ahead, for those of you who don't know London very well, this is Exhibition Street. This is between the Science Museum, close to the Royal Albert Hall, And basically, it's one of the experiments where within urban environments, they've taken a lot of the street furniture out. They've actually taken away all the usual road markings. As you can see, there is no discernible pavement. It's just the pavement is just an extension of the road. The road is just an extension of the pavement. And there are very few signs. And these kinds of integrated urban environments have proven to be, very successful at providing traffic calming and reducing accidents and generally a more integrated space. Other things that we're looking at are, for example, the reprioritization of rights of way. This is a Dutch example. And again, things that we're very much looking at. And I think Robert was alluding to that as well. Historically, lots of segregation and lots of issues related to the rise of highways and railways in terms of how people can cross and the focus on the vehicle rather than on the people. And this is one example where we're very much looking at how these kind of solutions can change the way that the urban environment is designed and built. Multimodal hubs is another area. We can look at different designs of multimodal hubs, large ones, small ones that can do different types of modes, including Hyperloop, for example. If you can see here, potentially we have an HTT tube coming into our multimodal hub. So one of the things that we've done recently is obviously we have and I say obviously, but we have a partnership or a framework agreement with HTT and are working closely on some of their projects together, particularly around, from our perspective, the financing and construction and the engineering of the delivery of projects. And obviously hubs are as one of those areas, and Hyperloop is one of those areas of future mobility that we're exploring, along with urban air mobility, flying taxis, virtual presence. We can see we've just spent 18 months, pretty much all of us, stuck in front of Teams. It's an interesting environment, or Teams or Zoom as is today. It's an interesting environment, but far from optimum. But obviously things, even in the last 18 months, have improved dramatically. But we're also looking at new forms of technology. So things like quantum computing, which is a new paradigm in computing and will, again, for certain use cases, will accelerate the speed at which decisions can be made exponentially. So I'm going to end on a final note. I don't want to take too much more time, but I just want to say when, a lot of these aspects are technically possible, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them can be done, but not all of them can be implemented now and for various reasons. And I think one of the things that I'd like to just draw everyone's attention when it comes to all of these things, it doesn't matter what an individual company or an individual politician needs. What we need is, in order to implement all of these things, is leadership. And obviously, I've chosen Greta Thunberg as one potential about how one person can really set the agenda and drive it forward. But ultimately, and she's the one showing courage and leadership in that regard. But in order to fulfill a lot of these promises that we're trying to address, we need to have that joined up approach between citizens, and by citizens, I also mean voters. We need politicians' involvement because a lot of politicians get involved, and obviously business, both from a delivery perspective and also funding perspective. So, I think just wanted to make that point that we need to have all of these coming together. It's not going to be one company or one group of stakeholders that are going to make the difference. It's everybody working together. But a spark, whether that's Elon Musk, whether that's Greta Thunberg, whether that's another key leader, I think we're going to need that, and we're seeing signs of some of those things, and I just wanted to reinforce that point. And that's all I wanted to share today.
Excellent, Adrian. That was that was really great, and I love how you ended that with Greta and the importance of what that psychology does, to each and every one of us. So I would like to introduce our next presenter. So Jaime Moreno is quintessentially called the Pablo Picasso of design. Actually, I just made that up, but he is one of those guys that just is always thinking, creating, looking for new ways of developing processes and whatnot. So I really like who he is, his style, his constant giving back to the design community and strengthening the design community. That's really important for me as well as the chair for IDSA. And he has a degree in transportation design from the Art Center College in Design. He began his career as a design consultant at Philips in the domestic appliance department in Holland. And after founding Mormedi, in 1997, he has grown his company with high-level national and international projects for companies like Airbus, Air Europa, Iberia, Virgin Atlantic, BMW. The list goes on because he's stellar, obviously connected to the mobile sector. So he has a lot to contribute to this, and he's even been asked to give great presentations at Harvard University in London and Copenhagen, all around the world. So without further ado, Jaime, would you please enlighten us with what you have learned?
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for the introduction. And hello, everybody. Today, I would like to share with you briefly in the next 10 minutes about our vision of the future of mobility. So just very briefly, Jason made a brief introduction of myself. My background is transportation designer. I founded Mormedi 23 years ago. And from the first day, we wanted to be a global boutique design firm. Due to complexity, we had to grow our team and our capabilities. And today we have a multicultural team. If you can go to the next one, Laura. Our headquarters is based in Spain, in Madrid, but 70% of our business is coming from outside of Spain. About 25% is coming from the US, 20 from Europe, 25, and also Asia. We have 3 branches, one in London. Jan is leading, I think he's connected today from London, and Tokyo and Mexico. We work across several different industries. Transportation and mobility for us is the biggest one. It represents about 50% of our business, but we also have work in financial services, in consumer electronics, home appliances, connected services, and retail innovation. And what we do is we help companies by uncovering what customer needs and designing it. We create experiences that result in a positive impact in P&L, in NPS, or in conversion. And just to give you a brief overview, we're living in a shifting moment. The current scenario, I mean, COVID has changed a lot of things in a bad sense, but also in a positive sense. I think it has accelerated dramatically digital transformation in many companies. It has changed the way we are working, but also, according to IBM, about 40% of consumers base their purchase on brand purpose. This new reality, Laura, can you go back? This new reality is forcing brands to review their value proposition and the role they play in people's life. And this is quite important. No? So if we look at the next slide, and one of the things that we do is analyze trends and how those trends could affect a specific industry. And we look at trends at different levels, social and demographics, new consumer lifestyle, urban life, technology, sustainability, and in specific sectors. No? If we look at social and demographics, well, we all know, I mean, many regions of the world, the population is getting older and is living longer. And this is a great opportunity to redesign mobility for these people. It's a little bit like when the low-cost airlines came out, they make the market much bigger. Well, we believe that, for example, autonomous vehicles are going to help specifically for this segment to move much more than they used to move before. No? Also, human connections. People need to have a human connections, as I mentioned before, with the brands. We also think about healthier lives. I mean, one of the things that COVID brought as well is that people are much more concerned about their health. Flexi experiences. People don't want long-term commitments. We saw it with Netflix. You can basically cancel the contract with 30 days notice. But we also seen it in office work, like we work. People don't want to rent for 3-4 years. They want flexibility. We are also seeing it co-living spaces, but we also seen in the automotive industry. I mean, Porsche and Cadillac, they have launched some programs where you basically pay a monthly fee. Depending on the fee that you pay, you have access to different levels of cars, and with 30-day notice, you can cancel it. So this is going to change also the way that we see mobility now. If we go next, Adrian was talking also a little bit before about this. Now, what we think is how can a mobility company redesign the relationship with its customers? And we think that you need to look at the entire user experience. You need to think in a multimodal, with a multimodal perspective as well. We're seeing some car manufacturers, like last year, Toyota announced, we don't want to be an OEM manufacturer anymore. We want to be a mobility partner. And this requires looking at different ways of moving around the city or outside the city, and new concepts, no? Like ride-hailing, the van pooling, car sharing, and as I said, we're going to see shortly autonomous cars, but also air taxis. I mean, the Ferrovial is invested in that field as well. No? So what is changing? No? And just to give you like a quick overview, well, mobility as a service is growing dramatically. I mean, we are expecting that it's going to grow more than 10% every year for the next 5 years now. The number of passenger rides has increased also a lot in the last 2 years. Ride-sharing revenue in 2026, they're expecting to grow quite a lot as well. And if you look, the market valuation of Uber compared with Ford, I mean, is much higher than Ford. No? So it is expected that ride-hailing will continue its onwards trajectory over the coming years in the developing countries. And also, while companies like Uber and Didi offer an over-the-top service for vehicles, how can OEMs pivot and use their competitive advantage as a car makers? No? And also, if we talk about multimodality or shared transport, no, we're going to see new ways of moving around the cities. I mean, just looking at scooter sharing, how it has grown in the last years is quite impressive. But also bike sharing due to COVID has increased a lot in many of the cities. And we're also seeing VC funding has increased a lot for air taxi startups. So the pandemic has put health at the top of everyone's mind, and people are now particularly conscious about how they can travel and remain healthy. No? And these behavioral changes will likely stick, no? As people get used to new shared transport services, which they will continue to use in the future. Cargo and logistics, we have seen how, I mean, e-commerce and the use of digital channels has increased a lot. I mean, right now, if you look at China, I think about 55% of the commerce that is done in China is done through e-commerce. In Europe, we have much lower rate, in the US and UK, but this definitely is increasing the investment in what we call the global last mile delivery now. And we're going to see this keep growing at 2 digits for the next 4 or 5 years. So e-commerce as a share of total retail spending had and still has much room to grow. And last but not least, if you move forward, as I mentioned before, infrastructure and connected services. Now, here you have in the picture Toyota City. No? They announced that they would like to set up a city and use it as a living lab, no? Because they want to be a mobility partner. They don't want to be anymore OEM manufacturer. But also Nissan has announced that they want to do a similar project next to Yokohama. And I'm pretty sure in the next years, we're going to see other car manufacturers that they will take some locations and starting to think about how they can build a real living lab in order to be part of the infrastructure and connected cities. No? So as well, cities will require new infrastructure for share and for autonomous connected mobility, and connectivity forecast has become a standard. Mass transit has also been evolving during the last years. While we have seen airlines suffering a lot, on the other hand, we have seen that high-speed train has been a winner of this COVID situation. And we are seeing some announcements, like, for example, French government announced that it's going to forbid any air travel that could be done in high-speed train in less than 2 hours. So mass transit is going definitely to be to grow quite a lot in the next years as well. And aviation, they have to reinvent. I mean, they are struggling a lot at this moment. We don't see that they are going to recover to pre-COVID ratio before 2024, 2025. And even in 2024, 2025, what we predict is that business travel would not be never at the same level that it was in 2019. So we are also seeing that big aircrafts has been taken away, like the A380s from Lufthansa and other airlines. And airlines are also ordering smaller aircrafts in order to fly long-haul flights with narrow body. So we're going to see in the next years probably a lot of like 6 to 8 hours flight in narrow bodies aircrafts. So what to do? I think mobility companies must create a seamless customer experience across our customer lives. So end to end, I mean, from awareness, I should be able to decide which is the best way to move from A to B, and companies should offer me different options. And also, they need to transform the relationship with customers and passengers. Companies, in order to stand out, I mean, it's not enough to make technology part of the experience. The entire relationship model must be transformed. And the role of design would be essential for companies in rethinking their overall model to a mobility service approach. Just briefly, I want to share 3 brief stories. So the first one, as Rob was announcing, we're very happy. I mean, we started a collaboration 2.5 years ago in Las Vegas, and shortly, in a few weeks, this project will be launched. We have also collaborated in the next one. We have also collaborated with Ferrovial on several projects, and we're very proud that we were part of creating the branding of Wando that recently merged with Mass Global. And last but not least, we have worked on several concepts and several projects in mobility. This was an electric vehicle that we designed 2.5 years ago. And well, thank you very much.
Excellent, excellent. Wow. So we've uncovered a lot. We've been enlightened on various subject matters and things that are directly and tangentially connected to the future of mobility. So what I'd like to do is open up for some Q&A. And I know Peter Cansfield has a question about, can you fit a standard cargo container in the tunnel? Does this mean that we're now having to redesign what the cargo vessels will be and act like, or will it just naturally stay the same, but will be accommodating, you know, the Hyperloop as a design? And this goes to anyone, actually. I think the question was originally brought up when Rob was presenting, but
I can take this, Jason.
Anyone? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and it's the most important question. So the Hyperport system is engineered to current industry standards. So essentially, it's plug and play. You can accommodate the weight and dimensions of either 2 20-foot standard or high cube containers, or 1 40 or 40-foot 45-foot container. So it fits into today's system. So the world doesn't need to change for us. We need to adapt to the world.
Adrian, do you want to add to that?
No, I totally agree. I think the point that Rob's making about adapting to existing standards is absolutely critical. And again, it's something that we see not just in Hyperloop and Hyperport with existing logistics and freight standards, but we'll see it with other technologies as well. I guess one of the big questions, let's say, in autonomous vehicles is at the moment there is no given standard, for example, as to which sensors vehicles use, and there's lots of debate and about whether you need to have more than cameras and all of these things. So in some areas those standards aren't fixed, but where they are fixed, for example, in freight containers, and not just at container size, but also at smaller pallet sizes and package sizes, there are definitely things that need to be considered and are super important when looking at the financial sustainability of new technologies.
On that note, I have a question in regards to the building of the policy, the building of what the standards should be. Do you feel that there's, and this applies to everybody on the panel, do you feel that there's sort of this need and rush to be the first so that whatever standards, whatever designs actually do come out based on your efforts, then therefore that becomes sort of the leader for all other policies, all other kinds of governmental restrictions and regulations and whatnot, because you're sort of creating something that hasn't been done before to a certain extent. Is there anyone who would like to tackle that?
Sure, Jason, I can speak to that a little bit. I mean, the reality is that the technology has been ready for several years now, but the regulations actually take a little bit longer. So it's something we've been working on as long as we've been thinking about the technology. This is not a, we've seen a few, like, this is not a VHS Betamax type of world where something wins. I think, we're at a stage now where there's still a lot of innovation happening inside of the tube. So, we need to let that happen, and there'll be different iterations as we move forward, and we'll continue to increase efficiency. So I think we've seen an unbelievable embrace of Hyperloop, so much so that the traditional and conservative Department of Transportation of the United States has started what they're calling a net council, new and emerging transportations and technologies. And now Hyperloop is considered part of we have an agency, and the Federal Railroad Agency, and kind of from their eyes, we're a new but mainstream transportation source.
Well, on kind of adding on to that, David Muris has a question for Rob, which is what design cues are you designing into the Hyperloop system to make it appear friendly and safe for people? Initially, it may sound scary. So how are you making it a friendly, desirable, and safe alternative? And I'll add to that, which is, if you think about the MRI scan concepts and how it used to be and how they've invested a tremendous amount of money and time in understanding what people want to feel comfortable going through that experience, it's something that is a valid question.
That's a great analogy, Jason. It's kind of the form follows function, but dictated by ceremony. So ceremony are the things we understand about transportation today. So we need to respect that piece of it. Even in the beginning, there are two ways to talk about the speed of Hyperloop. You can say we're traveling at the speed of sound, which when we talk about that, we're traveling on the ground at the speed of sound. 10% of people are very excited to do that. And then probably 60–70% are pretty cautious about traveling the speed of sound. However, the reality is that we're on par with essentially airplane speeds. So airplane speeds are something that most of us have experienced and most of us have survived. So we, instead of talking about the speed of sound, we talk about traveling airplane speeds. And it's a way that even that small thing that people can understand. So it's a great question. You know, I think we just need to be respectful of you know, we need to create a better passenger experience, yet understand what people, you know, what scares people about traveling something new.
So David has another question, and this is directed to Adrian or Jaime. Do you see the electric vehicle takeoff and landing, the eVTOL mobility, actually solving mobility and mass transit congestion issues versus being a low volume option for wealthier commuters?
So let me answer on behalf of well, I say on behalf of Ferrovial, but also on behalf of myself, and that is, you know, if we have to make an assumption that, you know, the promises of eVTOL stack up in terms of production costs and operation costs. So far, so good in that regard. So if we look forward 5-10 years, I think the answer to the specific question is no to both fronts. So I don't think eVTOL is going to be the solution. It will be part of a solution which will involve many different things. And I can, you know, talk for hours about particular use cases and particular routes that would, you know, absolutely be transformed by the eVTOLs, as I can about Hyperloop routes and as I can about other forms of transport. So there is no silver bullet to everything. I mean, I think there are some, you know, fundamental underlying foundational technologies, you know, connectivity, 5G, you know, edge compute, improved data processing, potentially quantum as well, that are going to be really, you know, part of a lot of these solutions. But there is no single solution. What I also very strongly believe is that whilst eVTOLs won't be, you know, the silver bullet, they won't also just be for wealthy passengers. Whilst, you know, on the surface they look expensive, and for sure the initial routes will be catering to those. I mean, I'd be monumentally surprised if some of the initial routes weren't existing helicopter routes, and existing helicopter routes are, you know, targeting, they're regulated, so they're available in terms of air traffic space, so they're relatively speaking easy to manage, but they will also follow, you know, the routes of the people who can use helicopters. So initially there will be a you know, early adopter, wealthy adopter kind of approach, but, you know, very soon, again, subject to regulation, we will see, you know, eVTOLs coming as a serious option for anyone, and will be probably the right option for many routes.
Just to add
yes.
on, I think on one hand, electric vehicles are going to become much cheaper. I mean, as batteries, I think they're estimating 4 or 5 years is that the cost of batteries will be 1/3. So this means that it's going to be a significant decrease in price of electric vehicles. But as Adrian was saying, I don't think it's the only source. I think we're going to see hydrogen or gas, other clean systems. To us, it's a transition. We see electric vehicles as a transition transportation technology until we have better ones. But clearly, I think in the urban cities, pollution is an issue. It's a big issue. And I mean, I live in Madrid, and Madrid announced in 3-4 years, I don't think they're going to have any diesel bus in the whole city. And they are moving to hybrid, or they are moving to clean to gas vehicles. So I think Europe is quite advanced in that. I still think that maybe South Asia is much behind, because they cannot afford at this moment to change the whole industry. But I would say clean energies are here to stay. And electric vehicles is the first, well, right now, probably the biggest one. In terms of traffics, congestions, well, I think when we'll start to see autonomous vehicles like in 20-30% of, when they would have like 20-30% of market shares, we'll see that transportation will be much more efficient.
Excellent. I'd like to field one more question, and that's from, I believe you pronounce her name Jan or Jan Newell Lewis. And his question is, how do we see developing around the additional complexities at the interface between different modalities and their respective standards, etc.? Any thoughts on that, anyone?
So, I mean, I can answer that. In my presentation, I alluded to, well, I would say, you know, two specific, I'll call it trends, or three specific trends, I'll say. One is multimodal hubs. So we will see over the next coming years, we've already seen them started, but we will see, you know, multimodal hubs developing everywhere. I would be surprised if there was any transport hub being developed or in the planning stages at the moment that didn't factor in a multitude of different modes, and they will also start introducing, even today, you will see most hubs will be at least designed from the outset, thinking about eVTOLs, for example. And this is not just in terms of, you know, the design of the hubs, but also in their location. So where you will find these hubs will be determined by, you know, ground transport, air transport, pedestrian transport, freight transport. There will be a lot more factors going into the designs already today, and we'll see that come to fruition over the next, you know, in the next 5 to 10 years, absolutely. But already today you will see that. So that's one angle. Another angle would be, you know, making sure that we see intermodal planning. So mobility as a service that Jaime has already spoken about. You know, people will increasingly be looking at, you know, origin destination trips or trips based on purpose with, you know, personalized selection in terms of not only route choice, but mode choice and price point choice. There will be a whole slew of different parameters that you can use that will optimize the route and mode that is most appropriate to you. And we will see those all coming together in a shall we say, a single user experience, probably in some form of mobility as a service offering. And that's, again, something that's already happened. We're involved in that, and I can see that happening. And then the third angle, again, I already spoke about it in my presentation, things like quantum computing. So one of the biggest challenges we have today is, you know, even relatively simple optimization algorithms require an awful lot of processing power to come up with the right solution. And effectively, even the cleverest ones use brute force in order to arrive at a, you know, probabilistic scenario that may or may not be correct. I think as we start replacing some of these solutions with quantum computing, for the right use cases, we'll be able to see a lot more complex optimization of intermodal choices with lots of moving parts. So you'll be able to, you know, you will start to see that as you arrive in one mode, the mode that you were predicted to be on is actually standing there ready, waiting for you, rather than departed 5 minutes earlier. And these are the kind of things that need to work in a much more multimodal and integrated society. At the moment, I think, you know, whilst the technology is improving, the solutions like MAS are improving, there's still a long way to go, but it is happening, it is moving, and we will see improvements happening very quickly.
Excellent. Well, I think that concludes this particular online session of Designing the Future of Mobility. I believe we do have everything recorded, and it will be offered to those who attended. I think we had at least 20 different nationalities that signed up for this particular session. And so I'm very thankful that the information went very broad and around, you know, around the globe to offer up new insights and new ways of thinking. And I think this is a conversation that we'll definitely see continue. It's really important. Not only that, it's something that has room for transformation and pivoting as technology advances and as people change and politics even dictate certain things. So I would like to thank everybody, specifically our panelists, for joining us and providing this great information. Adrian, Rob, and Jaime, this has been excellent. And Laura, thank you so much for all your efforts in putting this on, and I'll leave it to you to close things up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jason. I just wanted to repeat a few of the things that you already said. The presentations will be sent via email, and also we are going to share the recording of the event. So thank you very much, Rob, Adrian, Jaime, and of course, Jason, for your time, for letting us learn about what's is expected about the future of mobility. And thank you very much to all of our attendees today. Have a nice afternoon or a nice day for those that are in the other part of the world.